Man, is he English. He has to bring up the Hugh Grant, Notting Hill.
We got Julia Roberts in there.
It's your backyard. We talked about you need to specialize. You certainly understand Notting Hill, so perfect.
Welcome back, everybody, to this week's Sales Strategy and Enablement Podcast. I'm Alastair Woolcock, CSRO here at Revenue.io, joined by my co-host, Howard Brown, successful entrepreneur, founder, and guru in all things artificial intelligence and revenue science. Howard, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous. It's good to see you. Welcome, Charlie. It's great to be with you again.
Thank you.
Charlie, we are thrilled to have you back. It's Charlie Cowan, the RevOps Charlie, RevOpsCharlie.com. You've been a thought leader in the space of RevOps for, many years now, and also pioneered some of the books, one of which I love, How to Sell Tech. Brilliant insights inside there. Charlie, it's just wonderful to have you back here today.
Thanks very much. Great to chat with you both and talk about my favorite subject.
Yes, RevOps. Now, we had a really lively conversation last time about the automation, the data, and the raw impact that generative AI and AI is having itself. Today, I want to shift to more of the practical application of some of the changes we need to make. And I want to start with a newswire that came out about 30 days ago, roughly. And it was McKinsey & Company. And McKinsey & Company cited that amongst Fortune 100 companies, those that have a CRO, which is a more progressive role in the world of RevOps now, so Chief Revenue Officer instead of just a Chief Sales Officer, they grow 1.8 times faster and higher revenue than their peers. So we are seeing the impact now, Charlie, of RevOps in the Fortune 100. We're seeing the linkage between sales, customer success, marketing, and all of the tooling and data come together. I guess showing up, McKinsey is espousing it in the biggest companies in the world. And look, every startup these days should be embracing that approach as well. But you have a really interesting way of articulating how to pull this together in a flywheel in terms of the continuous nature of all of this. So let's dive into the RevOps Charlie flywheel if we can, and just talk a little bit about how you help companies conceptualize and get these kind of gains that McKinsey's talking about.
Yeah, just to encapsulate what revenue operations is as a topic, it's about aligning marketing, sales, and customer success into one unified process. And the reason why we do that, from my perspective, is that over the last 5-6 years, especially going through COVID, the way that customers, that buyers want to buy has completely changed. They've got no interest being on the receiving end of 80 SDR emails that all look exactly the same every day. They've got no interest at being spammed. And so they're taking control of how they want to buy. And a lot of that is involving them connecting with their peers in private Slack communities. It is going to G2 and looking at some of their grids. It is private WhatsApps. It's the dark funnel, as it's referred to. And at the point when they pretty much know what they want to do, that's when they put their hand up and they start speaking to vendors. I think Gartner has a stat that customers go 87% of the way through their entire buying cycle before they put their hand up and speak to a vendor. And so when we think about revenue operations, instead of it being us looking out to the market and going, right, how do we do a better job? I truly believe that we need to look inwards at our business from the external perspective of our prospects, of our customers, and importantly now, our partners, whether that's consulting or reseller partners. And so the flywheel that you talk about, which I describe with all of my clients, if you imagine, close your eyes and visualize a circle, a flywheel going clockwise, and it's split into two halves. The top half is very much the external aspects of the revenue acceleration flywheel. And so in the top half, we're talking about things like that dark funnel that I mentioned. We're talking about things like the content that you're creating on your website and your social feeds. We're talking about the buying experience that your buyer goes through as they move from your marketing teams to your SDRs, to your AEs, and on to onboarding. We're talking about the contracting process, what it's like to negotiate with you, the onboarding and adoption, and then on into your CSMs and any upsell and hopefully renewal and not churn. So that whole experience is an external one. What's it like to be a buyer of your services? And that is very, very strategic. It is not a tactical exercise at all. So to continue thinking about the flywheel, we now go down to the bottom half and we continue around. And these are very much the internal aspects of revenue operations. So here we're thinking about the things that are most commonly thought of as RevOps. So it's about our systems, it's about our org structure, it's about the data that we're using, it's about maybe some of our processes or how we forecast and how we compensate people. And you obviously need all of this. This is the core of RevOps, but it's only there in support of the capabilities that are in the top half, which is how our buyers perceive us. One of the things that I've really experienced in the RevOps community is that a lot of my RevOps professional colleagues have come from a marketing ops or a sales ops background, which was quite internally focused and quite tactical and data driven. And one of the most common questions that I see in the communities is, how do I become more strategic? How do I get a seat at the executive leadership table? How do I show and demonstrate that revenue operations is critical to the future of the business? And for me, it's about that top half of the flywheel. You've got to get out of the office. You've got to go and speak to customers. You've got to go and speak to prospects and partners and really understand their view of the world and how are they trying to solve their problems, and how does your buying experience support them in that?
As we think about that, Howard, the linkage to the customer, the linkage to engagement. That is when we talk to heads of RevOps, we talk to ops people, we talk to executives, like that's where these things often break down. I think to Charlie's point is the top half of the flywheel, it isn't being dressed enough. RevOps is not sales ops 2.0.
No.
Right? If you aren't thinking through engagement, you're going to miss the mark. Howard, I think, I know you're going to agree with Charlie in terms of the engagement, the top half of the flywheel, but how are you advising people on that, addressing that issue? Like, how do you move from being sales ops 2.0 to actually being genuine RevOps? Like, how do we synthesize and really be buyer-centric focused or customer-centric?
Well, and I love Charlie's example of using a flywheel with a top half and a bottom half. And I think what sits squarely in the middle is the customer. Like, this whole exercise is to deliver a better customer or buying experience. And if you are not focused on doing that, you will miss the boat. So the entirety of this exercise for every business today around go-to-market and customer retention and customer service and support has to be put the customer in the middle. And everything we do, everything we create is how to help them buy, how to help them have a better experience with your brand, with your people. And so if that is at the center point, all of the data exercise, all of the training, all of the enablement should be how to provide that better experience, because companies that don't think about their customer in the center and are architecting systems to provide a unique, a special, a great experience for their buyers and customers are going to be left behind. So for me, when we think about these exercises, it's also critical to think, how do I provide a great experience for my buyer or customer? Well, it definitely involves creating a great worker experience. And Charlie, I know back from your days at Aperio, that's something we talked about, was how do we create a great worker experience? Because if you create a great experience for your reps, they're far better suited to provide a great experience for their buyers or customers. But if you leave out their experience and what they need to provide that experience, guess what? They're going to be miserable. They're not going to be equipped with the information, the insights to provide that great experience. And those customers and buyers will suffer. So you can't just think about your customers. Yes, they're at the center, but every engagement is with a human being, is with a piece of content, is with your brand. And so focus on the customer, think about all of their touch points, and work towards building a great experience for that customer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a bit of the film Notting Hill, and there's this scene where Julia Roberts is standing in front of Hugh Grant. I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. And it's stripping away all of the celebrity and all of that. And I think a lot of that with this sales person and the buyer interaction, we built so much stuff around the different systems and recording and this and that. And at the end of the day, it just needs to be a salesperson standing in front of a buyer trying to help their business. And if you can allow them to have that, then all this other stuff should just disappear into the background.
Man, is he English. He has to bring up the Hugh Grant, Notting Hill.
We got Julia Roberts in there.
It's your backyard. We talked about you need to specialize. You certainly understand Notting Hill. So perfect.
What's really interesting to me, I want to draw the analogy back to the flywheel. Because all of what we're talking in terms of making this happen, remember it's two halves. And I don't think anybody's actually really going to debate us on that. But I will say that I think people don't actually treat it as a flywheel. They have a big wheel, and then you got a little tiny wheel on customer engagement. Well, what happens when I'm turning that? It's always going to swing back to the bottom half of ops. If you aren't equally approaching both the engagement, the customer side, in equal vigor in RevOps as you are the internal ops, you're never going to actually get a RevOps model. You're going to have veneer metrics, you're going to have things that sit there, but it is the two halves being equally balanced that actually make the flywheel move correctly. And I think for a lot of ops professionals, they're not comfortable with that. And Charlie, have you seen that? Is that a truism? The flywheel needs to be equal to work.
Yeah, exactly. And one question that comes up is is this just for startups? Do I start the flywheel from day one? But no, this is just as applicable to any organization, even if they're very well developed and have got a very extensive RevOps function, because these capabilities can always be improved. My history teacher at school, I remember saying, "I'd never give 100% because you could always do better," which I thought was a little bit mean. But you can always improve. And so even if you are a very well-developed global organization, you can still use that flywheel. And the second question that comes up a lot is, well, where should I start on the flywheel? And to me, it doesn't really matter. Start wherever, because you're going to go round in a circle and you're going to end up at the start pretty quickly. So whether you start with your strategy and your org structure, or whether you start with your buyer's experience and some of the sales content over on the other side, it's just about getting started somewhere and iteratively improving all of these. You never get to the end. And that's one of the reasons why it's a flywheel and not a line. There is no end. You keep going forever.
Yeah. I love that in so many ways, Charlie, because I think people get intimidated. They read RevOps and the complexity and, you have to reorg your entire business and who's going to own RevOps? Is it going to be marketing, sales, or operations? And, what do we do with comp structures and everything else? Start with something simple. What is it that you want to improve? What part of your business do you believe that you can improve in the shortest period of time that will have the largest impact? Start there. Figure out what that is. And then build out a blueprint, build out a plan, but you have to start somewhere. And I think people get intimidated by, wow, there's data governance, and now I need a data science team, and I need a sales organization that's aligned with marketing in a different way. And we have to have just find somewhere to start the process, bring in some experts like Charlie, start to evaluate the current situation, identify the pain, the challenge, and what value you want to move towards and work and get started. Don't be afraid. The fear again of it's too big, it's too overwhelming.
Yeah. We overcomplicate things, and we could learn a lot from our product colleagues over on the other side who are doing rapid experimentation. They're creating hypothesis, they're running A/B tests, they're just testing crazy on the product. And we don't tend to replicate that in go-to-market. We spend a lot of time planning and thinking, when instead, which to be, we've got a hypothesis, We think that if we put a diagnostic tool on the website, it'll help customers to understand the value. Right, well, let's just spin up a minimum viable product for that diagnostic and get it on the website this afternoon or later this week. These things don't have to take months and months. Test, see if it works, iterate, and go on to the next thing in the flywheel.
Man, he sounds like Alastair Woolcock, right? Like test, iterate, go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very big on, and I love your thinking there, Charlie. The agile style approach of development in go-to-market is absolutely front and center, right? And that's why you need the flywheel, because you need the agility associated with that, right? And be okay to get things wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked in many an enterprise, so I'm like, what we did in certain combinations of things, it didn't work as intended. All right, well, you know what? Let's move on to the next thing.
Fail fast. Yes.
Yes, fail fast, because as we've discussed both the last episode and this one, the rate of automation and AI impact here means you need to fail fast.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, that fail fast will mean you will equally succeed just as quickly. Right? Again, it's back to the balancing of it. So the agile approach, lowercase a, brought into go-to-market, really important. I think Charlie is bang on advice. And to your earlier point, it's not just startups. As we started with, McKinsey's now proving, again, back to their statement, Fortune 100s with these models, with the structure in place, let's face it, you don't have a CRO without a RevOps team. 1.8 times faster revenue growth in the Fortune 100 space. That's even more pronounced when you go further down market. So let's be agile. Let's go break a few things and test accordingly. On that, Charlie, and I know we're going to run out of time here soon, but in the spirit of failure, what's something that you've seen that people fail on in this?
I think certainly my experience in enterprise SaaS, things just take too long to get delivered. There's a lot of planning, a lot of ideas, and then at the end of the year, you go, we were going to do that webinar, weren't we, on something? And so things just don't travel from idea to execution fast enough. And in many ways, that can be cultural from the very top of the business, that actually, we need all these checks and balances and, no one make too many mistakes. But that needs to come right from the top of the business on the enterprise revenue structure, that actually we have urgency in our business. We're iterative, we're experimental, and we want to go fast. And I have this phrase, in some companies, everything happens in one day, and in other companies, nothing happens in an entire year. And you have these companies like, are we any further forward than we were a year ago? No. And that is that challenge. So it's implementing a bit more of this urgency and momentum in these organizations.
Well, Charlie, this has been a fantastic conversation with you. Unfortunately, I'm going to bring us near the end due to our time constraints here. But, I think the two halves of the flywheel sync together is a key element to solving that problem, right? If you're going a year and not iterating, you're failing, right? And that brings me actually squarely to this week's trivia question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so not as comical as last week's. We'll have Charlie, on this one, but do actually think of these companies now and the changes they're undergoing. Catherine Grotowski, who is vice president at General Electric, came out and said that AI represents a big part of the next big thing. What was the next big thing that Catherine referenced from General Electric? Artificial general intelligence and generative AI. 2, finding intelligent machines that will automate GE. 3, that she believes that AI is going to be the fuel for the 4th industrial revolution.
I think it'd be that last one, that it's going to be the fuel for the next industrial revolution. I think it's going to transform the way that we build, manage, and run machines.
You're bang on, Charlie. That's exactly what Catherine said from VP from General Electric. And, and you just think about our couple conversations here, how transformative RevOps has been over the past really five years plus. And now we have AI hitting it square on in front of us. The ability to have an agile-based flywheel approach to my companies, you can't be stagnant anymore. The 4th industrial revolution is here. We are actually in it and living it right now. And many people argue that it's happening at a rate that is 4 times faster than anything previously in human history. So it's an exciting time to go change how we go to market and how we build those teams.
Absolutely. I think for me, I've been in sales 25 years. This is the most exciting time since email came in. It's all changed like never before.
Couldn't agree more. Charlie, final question. How does everybody get a hold of you? How do they dig in more on RevOps Charlie, all of these things? Where do we get a hold of you?
The easiest way is at RevOpsCharlie.com, where I've got a lot of content and videos there, but also I post daily on LinkedIn with revenue growth strategies, everything covering all aspects of RevOps. So I'd love to see you and connect with you there.
Well, thanks so much. We definitely will. Charlie, it's been brilliant to have you on. Love your thought leadership in the space. Please keep it up. It's a fantastic experience. You're making the world of sellers a better place. So thank you for that.
Thank you both, Howard and Alastair, for having me on.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and send in your questions to Howard and I. We'll do our best to get them on future episodes. Thanks for joining in. Howard, as always, great to see you. Charlie, great to see you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Appreciate it.